Welcome back to the hashtag I Be My Everywhere podcast. Glad to have Neal with me today. Neal, thanks so much for joining.
No problem, Josh. Pleasure to be here.
You have a very interesting take on the AI world and the IBMI world. I'm really excited to hear more about your story and also just hear about how you've gotten so interested and how you're using AI today. So why don't we get started hearing about your background from an IBMI perspective, and then let's have a conversation.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I was born in Wimbledon in London and I came to Australia when I was about 11. I've been working on the IBMI for about 30 years. I've worked in all kinds of industries, early on in banking, insurance, retail, manufacturing. I've worked for big companies like Coca-Cola and Panasonic. And I've been really fortunate, Josh, to have worked in so many different countries. And the skills that I got early with the IBMI really been useful for me. And it's allowed me to travel the world and meet lots of different people and really enjoy myself. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, what an amazing story there. And let's talk a little bit about being a consultant. I think it's a very interesting thing, especially in the technology space, that there are so many consultants. And maybe you could share a little bit about why you chose to be a consultant and continue to be a consultant.
I really like to sit down and listen to people and allow them to tell me their problems. I think of all the skills that I have, I think listening is one of the main ones. And it's really important as a consultant because when you're asked to join a company and you're asked to do something, to provide a solution or to fix something, all the people there are the ones that have all the knowledge that you have to tap into. So I really enjoy that aspect of consulting, to listen.
Well, let's talk a little bit about communication. It's getting that other person comfortable and allowing them the space to share. And in the IT world, I think it's challenging to really be focused on the communications and listening. And how did you learn to be that excellent communicator?
I really believe around the world and meeting different people from different walks of life is a key factor in how I communicate. To be able to talk with all kinds of people, whether they're the CEO, whether they're somebody who works in accounts payable, whether it's someone old or someone young, I think to be able to communicate on their level is so important. And I also think that with technology, kind of hindered our communication skills in that it's so easy now just to send an email or a text rather than go and talk to somebody. But those communication skills, those oral skills are so important. And I think those are the skills that we need to maintain and not get lost in just sort of communicating electronically.
I love that. It's a really big thing because phones have really changed the way that we communicate. You need to put some guardrails on it because without the guardrails, you can have the best thing in the world, but it needs to have those guardrails to be able to manage it properly. But let's change
Yeah.
subjects a little bit and talking
Mm.
about technology really brought you to the forefront on my LinkedIn feed is all your amazing content around what's going on with AI. And I will love to hear a little bit more about what's driving you and how you're using it and where you see the future going with it. So let's start with what's AI to you?
Yeah. Well, I find AI just so fascinating. And my journey really only began this year, Josh. I was at work in January and I was struggling with a bug, a program bug, and a colleague, a .NET programmer, said to me, "Why don't you use AI?" And I said, so naively, I said, "It's RPG, it's old, it won't know anything about my language." And he said, "Just try." And we used Microsoft Copilot, and it came back with so many options. So many possible solutions that I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it. And from there, I went to the chat bots and started putting in a question and getting a reply and becoming more and more intrigued and captivated by how knowledgeable this thing was. I've just gone deeper and deeper into looking into where we are right now with ChatGPT only being 3 years old, Josh. Like it's hard to believe. And I've come from a place where when I went to school, we used encyclopedias. So when Google came along, I could hardly believe how good it was. It's incredible. So that's what I find with AI. It's so incredible already, and we're only getting started.
Let's talk about your use case using AI in your IBMI RPG world. How have you grown from that original case and built from there?
So with AI at work, I've done a lot of research into Project Bob, which is a AI-powered IDE that IBM looks like it's going to be released early next year. The whole year, IBM have been talking about releasing a model based on their Granite, the IBM I. IBM have made this partnership with Anthropic, and Anthropic have an LLM called Claude Sonnet, which everybody seems to think is the best for coding. And so this model, along with a lot of other models, is powering Project Bob. I've done a lot of research on it. It's going to be really good. And the developers that are using it are really engaged with it. And I think that is something that's going to be really exciting next year when it comes out.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit about that, specifically around IBMI and this AI? People are excited about it.
Yeah, they are. From what I've heard, I thought it was just going to be for the IBM and mainframes, the Z series. But I spoke to a project manager and he said to me, it's for any language on any platform. Those were his words. So you think, wow, this is for everybody. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. This is the discovery phase that we're going to enter into next year. And we're going to see the potential. And I think from there, things will get interesting.
So, for your prediction for 2026 and beyond, where do you see IBMI going?
It's a good question. I think this is going to disrupt the developer space, definitely. From what I've seen from the developers working on Project Bob, they say that it's giving them the confidence to tackle tasks that they normally would have left, right? So, in that context, let's say that next year lots of IBMI developers start using it and feel this is a really good tool. This can do a lot of things. Will that play out? How will developers go to their managers and say, we can do this, we can do that, we can do things maybe a lot faster than what we were thinking? I think that's going to be where we're going to go next year. When this thing comes out, we're going to find out the potential and we're going to see where we can go with it.
I think that's a really big thing for IBMI from an optics perspective. Do you think that AI has the chance to rewrite the optics of IBMI?
I think we're only getting started, and this is just scratching the surface. We don't really know how much this is going to help developers. We know it will, but how big will it be? We still don't know. IBMI and the mainframe is kind of not very cool. It's not very cool to work on these machines, you know. There are newer languages. I think it has an image problem. I think this could go a long way to addressing that image problem because RPG, it's really transformed. It's a very modern language, but it has this image problem where people say, oh, it's a 60-year-old language. And yes, some of the code is extremely old and antiquated. Perhaps AI is going to help us to rewrite that old code and make it more accessible for the next generation. I really think we're at this inflection point next year. It's definitely an inflection point. We just don't know if it's like this or if it's like this. How I feel, Josh. What do you say? What do you think?
I would have to agree with you. We're still at the beginning. We've seen the beauty of it and the power of it in the other development languages. And now it's coming to, I hate to call it legacy, but our legacy systems.
Yeah.
And those are really what power the world. When they are supercharged with AI, rewriting these banking applications, insurance applications, healthcare applications that are millions or perhaps billions of lines of code that have been written since the 70s and have been updated. And their challenges are their security breaches. There's challenges with lots of things that could be changed. And that's very exciting. I have a different question. Going back to your communication, you mentioned that you've climbed and spoken to many different people among a organization.
Mhm.
And I really think that what's important for us to be thinking about is how did you manage those conversations between the lower and the higher, the CEO, the CIO? How did you tailor your conversation to be able for them to be able to understand what you're talking about?
I think it's all about listening. Whenever I talk to anybody, I generally try and say as little as possible, and I let them do the talking, and I let them explain to me what their problem is or what they want to talk about. And so I think from that point, it's listening, it's so important. And then I think you've got to be a person that they trust and they understand that you know what you're talking about and that you want to do a good job for them. I think that's really important to get across. And I think it's about finding the common ground and it's about trying to hone in on what the actual problem is and finding the best solution. So I think that's really important. It's understanding the problem and finding the best solution. Yeah.
Listening is a skill that is very hard today because there's so many other things to look at. There's so many other things to be focused on or distracted by. And
Yes.
multitasking is not really possible. It's just switching between multiple tasks very quickly. That's all that it is. And talking about that, do you find that it's become harder for you with people because of the fact there's a lack of focus?
I can't say that I have. I think definitely another big shake-up was COVID. When COVID hit and we were all locked away, I think that made I think that did have an impact on communication. We do have to be careful. Communication becoming a skill that people are not paying attention to, and it's vital. It's so important. I think it's really important to, even if you're joining a company and you have the skills, it's really important to be social. It's really important to play sport and go out and meet people and do those things rather than just be an academic achiever. What do you think?
I think that it's a very valid point, but I think there's another point here. Communication is not something that if you have it, you have it, or if you don't have it, you don't have it. It's something you can learn.
Absolutely, I agree.
I think that people sometimes view themselves as not communicators or not good at explaining things or just not social. I'll be honest, I watch a lot of videos on how to get better at communicating points, especially ones that are more complicated,
Wow.
because it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something you can learn. I was going to ask you about Any good stories you have on IBMI?
I've got a great story, and I know you're going to love this story. And it's so relevant to AI. 15 years ago, I was working for a company called Never Fails Spring Water. They were bought by Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola hired a data engineer, and they told the data engineer, the one thing we want you to focus on is increase sales. I worked alongside him because I knew where all the data was and I knew all the files. After about 2 months, we really didn't have anything until we noticed that Neverfell had two cup sizes, small and a large cup. And we noticed that customers that bought the small cups consumed less water, and customers that bought the big cups consumed more water. When we looked at it, that was across the board about 8% more with the customers using bigger cups. So all Coca-Cola did was get rid of the smaller cups and increased sales by maybe 7, 8%. Now, that's such a small thing,
Whoa.
right? But this is the best part. AI is going to expose those things so many times. And the best part is we know that with the IBMI, for instance, we have these beautiful files and we have everything nice and structured. That's called structured data. But most enterprises, most of their data is unstructured, right? 90% of data is unstructured. For instance, these videos are unstructured, but there's gold in these videos, all these videos that you've made. But how do we get to that? How can we use that data? So when you look at AI and 90% of data being unstructured, imagine the treasure trove of things that we can unearth like that cup story with AI. Imagine. That's when I get excited, Josh, because I've seen it, right? I've seen it. And I know we've got this tool now that could just explode. It could open up so many different avenues for enterprises. That's why I'm excited.
So here's the thing, and this is something I've been talking a lot about, which is like, do you find it as a crutch? But I also find that if you don't have the experience, the reason that you're so excited is because of your experience that is gives you the opportunity to think about how to leverage AI in a true way. Because as we know, AI is only as good as your question is.
Yeah. And your
And
data.
yes, and your data, both of those things. It's question and against your data. And without your experience, you would not be able to ask that question. So for the younger generation who do not have that experience, how is it going to be as successful and how do we bridge that gap?
I think it's the data. I think we've got to unearth that unstructured data. I think that's the starting point, that we need to look at that data, see what we've got. And then I just think it's curiosity. I think AI is the perfect thing for brainstorming. Enterprises need to sit together and talk about the possibilities. And I think you need creatives. You need people who can think outside the box because this has the potential to do a lot of disruption. And I think people need to brainstorm together and say, what have we got and what can we use it for? Let's think. Let's think crazy. Let's think different. Let's not think how we've been thinking the whole time since we got here. Let's think big. And I think that's gonna expose a lot of potential sources of wins.
I would agree with that. That's all that I have. And Neal, A pleasure. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you joining the hashtag IBMI Everywhere show. If anyone else wants to join, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks so much.